Okay, and let's begin. Mr. Morzeau will be taking his seat up front here. First of all, my name is Don Taylor, if you don't know me. I'm the director of the Stand 21 Safety Foundation. We've been celebrating 15 years for the last year. Soon it'll be 16 years. And there's a history to it, and a history to how I got involved. I was at General Motors. I ran the NASCAR program. I was involved in the Le Mans programs. In the GM Motorsports safety program, we did some initial work with black boxes and IndyCar crashes and all the leg injuries. And we did research with the Hans, Wayne State, a lot of crash tests. And Dr. John Melvin was a GM employee at the time, so we got involved with him. And as you know, that whole safety thing took off. But Eve had been involved in the safety for many years actually before that. And then I was with NHRA as technical director, and I met Eve one day at Pomona. And he said, oh, I have something special in the way of fire safety in my suits, and is there somebody I can talk to? And we were looking for solutions, looking for something better. And so with that relationship, I got involved with Eve. I've been the director here for about 12 years, I believe. Maybe more. we don't, as we get older, we don't remember quite how many years it was. Anyway, we've been celebrating 15 years. And really, you talk about Eve's history. I don't know if you've seen the book that Eve put out, 50 years of Stand 21. Now in your 54th year, I guess, coming up here now. But Eve has this history. He got involved when a friend had an accident and got on fire. There were no standards. FIA had no standards for suits. People didn't wear seatbelts in those early days. And so Eve's been along to promote safety, got involved with Bob Hubbard and Jim Downing on the Hans work. He was an early distributor for the Hans, and he has, actually, Eve now has in the Huntington Beach office all the early Hans prototypes that Jim Downing gave to him for safekeeping. And the Hans went into the Smithsonian Museum recently, and it's a remarkable development and invention, and saved a lot of lives. And Eve's been along in that activity. But in fact, there he is on the lower right with Jim Downing. And then on the upper right, a famous photo, all these Grand Prix heroes, all in Stand 21 suits, before that became too expensive as a pursuit, because they want everything for free and they want sponsorship and everything in Formula One these days. It's kind of changed. Before, they just wanted the best product, but I guess today it comes with money. And then for us, at the foundation, we've been at the PRI show. That's one of our major events every year. We do a seminar there, and we've had a number of famous drivers and topics. I see driver hydration and heat stress, and actually we'll be covering that a little bit today too. And then we've done a lot of things with SCORE, with SCTA, and now we've gotten in the lower right involved in EV racing safety. And we put together a conference, ourselves and Eric Kuhn from UNC Charlotte put together a conference last October in Charlotte, and it looks like we'll be doing that again. And we're still on this electric vehicle safety topic. Today we'll hear from a couple of people about that. I'll tell you about that in a minute. And then we've been here. And so, and perhaps you've been to some of our, I'm sure you have. I recognize some faces from before. And so here we are. I made a list of the drivers, we'll add Boris to this now, that have spoken at our seminars. And the speakers, mainly doctors, engineers, sanctioning body folks who've all contributed to development of safety items. And what we've done as the foundation, we want to educate people. That's our role. And to do that, we've brought in neutral experts. These are not people promoting Stand 21 products. They're certainly not paid by Stand 21. And so many have been friends of Eve's for so many years, like Dr. Terry Trammell and Steve Olvey and Dr. John Melvin. So we've had the ability to get them to speak at our events. And we gave out some Lifetime Achievement Awards, kind of short-circuited by COVID, but we handed out 2 more here last December at the PRI show, Dr. Trammell and Jim Downing. And here we are today. And so I'm thrilled that we have some interesting people here today speaking, but also I see Robert Boswell from IMSA, who takes care of safety for EV activities, but everything else that happens out there. So thanks for taking the time to be with us. Lee Kennedy from, I guess, president or past president of SCTA. Jimmy Killian, just stopped in here for a few minutes. Scott Elkins, who's the race director for Formula E, and also he worked last night with the SRO activity, and he's got his hand in a lot of things. And he's been a longtime safety advocate and has his own foundation that he's been running, not in competition, but just, we're all trying to go to the same goal. And we're all small, so we can't really, cover the whole U.S. We do things where we can, and as Scott does. And so today we're going to hear from Dr. Claude Meisselman, who's coming here from France, who he's the former medical director for the Le Mans series. He works with the Le Mans Classique, the French WRC race aces, and Monte Carlo Historic, and so forth. And he can tell you about that. And he also is interested in EV safety, and he will also say something about heat stress, an important topic. And then we have Eric Hoon again. That's not his name. Actually, that's his nickname. His name is Eric Hoon, and he's known as a Hoonigan. Sorry to expose you on that one. Anyway, I asked Eric because he also works track safety with NASCAR and NHRA events. Talk about electric vehicle safety, but also just fires in general, and just some tips on fighting fires of all sorts. So he'll be doing that. And then Boris Said, a name we all know historically from racing, in fact, racing here at Long Beach, and we'll cover that incident. And I see also John Dinkle, who was former editor, Road and Track. As you grew up reading Road and Track, you remember that name? There's the man himself. And he's been working with Oscar Kovaleski on the Kid Racer program, and he has the T-shirt to prove that. So, welcome. And, we're all on this EV adventure, going down this road, this frontier of what to do next. We're trying to put together the people and the pieces that give us the knowledge of what's happening now, what we know, what are best practices, and trying to share that information. And I think Eric will talk a bit more about that. But at this point, I'd like Eve, if you'd come up here, please. Yves Morzeau, president and founder of Stand 21 and president of the Stand 21 Safety Foundation.
Hey, Romain. Because now I'm no more working, I'm spending time with my motorbike around your beautiful country. But it's a long way when I was started. In the 70s, there was no safety. And like Don was telling, between 70 and 80/16 was no standard. So a lot of drivers was writing a contract, they want to wear stand 21. And you know, it's a long, long way. Never I was thinking I will do that. I know when I see all of you around the table, you know, well-known people, people from racing, Scott, Lee, all of you, you know, I'm very, very impressed. It's not enough people, but it's a lot of very good people. What can I say in my life? Like we told, we like Jackie X. Last year we had Jackie X here. We are now in the Léonaudière, last straight line, 77. And I said, oh shit, the black flag will come. But we will take advantage to spread the information and to give what I did. I'm not here to promote stand 21, you know. I'm here to promote safety. Because more safety in racing, more racers. And you know, don't forget one thing. The professional racers, maybe they represent, they tell 5,000, 10,000 people around the world. Maybe 10,000. But do you know how many racers about? Oh, no, nobody knows exactly. About 4 million. You know, a lot of gentlemen, don't forget, a company like Porsche manufacture every year around 700 to 800 race cars. Not to go on a top level, but all the GT3. And I was with Hartmut Christen. Certainly some people know the name. He was the boss. Scott, Scott, he was the boss of Porsche World, Motorsport in the world. He told me the most popular 911 car today is a GT3. It's not the Standard, not the Cabrio, not the Targa. No, it's a GT3. You know, it shows that a company like Porsche, and we are partner with Porsche all around the world, it shows that we have so many sort of racing. I live in Dijon, Burgundy, wine country, but also race car country, a racing country. And the racetrack in the 70s, when they built the racetrack 73, the racetrack between 73 and 93 was maybe used 10, 15, 20, 30 days per year. Today is packed. You cannot get. They just have to do everything, increase the price, increase the price, and safety. Now, one day we were here in a seminar like that, and it was a fireman who was on a drag racing. He told us, you know, at 7 p.m. the fireman was leaving the track because they finished the day, but the race still continued till 11. We said no safety. Today, we cannot accept that. No, people who race today, they are not professionals. They don't want to make money. They are here to have a good day, good weekend with friends. After, is it they want to come enjoy with a friend, have a good day, and the day after come back to the office to make money and to see the family and to do what they want to do. The future of racing is what I was telling to Jean Todt, to all these people. The future of racing is a gentleman driver. And it's not the kids of 18 years old or 16. They are the future for the top level. It's great. But when you turn 40, you are working like a lot and you make some money. I said, oh, I love racing. I will go to, like with Lee Kennedy, in Bonneville, in Salt Lake, you know, one day you have to go over there. You are on the moon. You know, you are somewhere in the middle of nowhere with crazy people, with incredible car. I saw F40 Ferrari with speed racing. I saw so many incredible. So Mercedes 300 SL from 1954, just to go on the speed, you know. And you know, to finish, I will tell, if we do that, it's because we love racing. I love racing. Now, Romain is now the boss. I am the dad. I'm proud to be a dad. And, you know, we spend every year money in this foundation. If somebody can help me sometime, it would be great. Because, you know, every year we put about 80,000, 100,000 in the different things to do what we are doing, what is a lot of money. But at the same time, when you are doing that for 15 years, you can buy a home, you know. And I'm doing that just by dedication and because I'm so happy to see you and to spread the words on racing. Thank you, Boris, to be here. If we stay friends, don't kick my ass on a golf course, please. It's a long story. Okay, so Romain will tell some words.
Yeah, let me just add, Yves is from France. Yves lives in France, but he also has a home here. He loves America, and he said he loves racing. I told you I met him at Pomona, and you will find Yves during the year at Bonneville or El Mirage, Baja 1000. If there's racing, Daytona.
Long Beach Grand Prix.
Long Beach Grand Prix.
For more to 40 years.
Monterey Historics.
Yeah, are you sure?
And Yves knows somebody everywhere, and just the long history of Stan 21 and Yves. But the foundation was an effort for him to put something back into the sport his last 15 years. And like he says, it's primarily out of his own pocket that he's been doing this. But we have had some support, and now the last several years, Dean Case? We have had support from the regional Southern California region SAE chapter, and to represent that, Dean Case, you have something to say today?
Yeah, a couple of quick comments. One, I'll use the check, so there's money here for you. SAE SoCal, in racing it's all about the money. SAE SoCal, for those who don't know, is the second largest SAE section in the country. And not just ground transportation, but aerospace. And we also have more student chapters than any other section. We have 17 active student sections building Formula SA and Baja SA cars. So I would actually encourage you, all of you after this, go downstairs and visit the students. This is the pipeline for talent. And we just recently partnered, we value this partnership with Stan 21 Foundation. We've been doing this for about 10 years. I think I've known Don 30 plus years. But we've also partnered with our friends at SEMA and PRI. And we've done, recently we had a student showcase at the SEMA Garage. We had 238 students from 21 universities and over a dozen companies that are actively hiring. And that's all about getting these kids into the sport. And so for anyone that says the youth doesn't care about racing, they're wrong. All they have to do is come to an SAE event. And if you want to talk to myself, or I got two of our new board members from Haas Automation, who Haas is an amazing company who stepped up to support this section and our students. So we've got some good stuff going. And last little plug here is to take a look at the SAE SoCal YouTube channel. That's where this video will live afterwards. Because the reality is we don't get great attendance to these. We have great content. We'd love larger attendance, but now thanks to YouTube, these live forever. So you can review last year's with Jackie Ix and all the other ones we've recorded. So we're just happy to be partnering with this, and I think that was all I wanted to cover. Yeah. Please check out the student displays afterwards and talk to me afterwards if you'd like to be a volunteer. So thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Thanks for your support. Dean mentioned PRI show. I noticed Jim Lau, formerly of Formula Drift, the creator, partner in the creation and running of Formula Drift, and for the last several years in charge of the PRI show. And we're all curious. Maybe we'll grab you later and catch up a little bit on what's happening there. I know some electric vehicles have appeared at the show, and we were there, so we want to talk about that too. But Yves, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, just if I want to ride my motorbike around your beautiful country, last weekend with my wife Nelly, we were riding 550 miles in a desert, going to Julian, going to Jose Tree, all this party, sleeping in a nice place. If I want to do that, I need rest because I'm old, and I need time. And now it's my son, Romain, we were working 22 years together. Now he showed me, more?
Tax-free, a bit more.
23, yeah.
24.
24, oh la la, I'm old. and he will tell you some words. Okay?
Bonjour. So welcome to the seminar. That won't be that long because I know you would like to see the presentation. So thank you for the speakers. Boris, thank you for being with us. Claude, I know you're ready. Eric, always ready as well. Terry will be online, correct? So yeah, Terry Trammell. So will be online with us as well. You've seen all the past, speakers, and yeah, it's a teamwork because as you understood, safety is our duty. A driver is just a human being. And I think we make a noble, job, save life. But this is just a job. We have to stay humble. You got a big fire, so I remember that on TV, on live. And this is an endless process. So that's why we like to share anything can help. And obviously anything that people can use when they pass the door. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy racing and enjoy the seminar. Thank you.
And let's bring up Boris. Boris said a long career in a lot of different cars. And I recall, of course, Trans Am, different sports cars, Indy cars. We were at the Brickyard. Do you remember? I think it was the first race.
Yep.
And we're following cars to go back out of the track, go to town and turn left. And the cop said, turn right, turn right, turn right. So the car ahead of us said, I want to turn left, I want to turn left. The cop pulls the guy out of the car, has him up against the trunk, and I said to my wife, isn't that Boris?
Yeah, it was.
Which shows his determination. Actually, they were putting people in jail that weekend. Luckily,
He let me go.
you escaped it. He took your keys and threw them in the grass or something, and eventually let you go there.
Right.
But you are famous. We'll talk about different things you've done. You're famous for the fire. You can't escape the fire at Long Beach. Why don't we start with just showing the video,
Okay.
and then you can talk about your reaction and how you got to that point.
Oh, no. Oh, this is the Lou Gelati, the number 28. Maybe that was that big plume.
I bet you that is. That might be the end of the straight.
And Boris said bails, so that's the good news. He is out of that car. This is actually
Now-
down at the other end of the track. And full course yellow.
Okay, here we go. This is exactly what David Brabham was praying for. This is going to close the field up, even if there are cars between them. At least that gap of 8.8 seconds suddenly is going to be reduced down dramatically. Look at how fast they put it out. Credit to those guys right there. Really good job on the safety crew.
Give you a look here.
Okay, that's it. That's down at turn 1. And you can see the smoke has drifted across the track where the fire actually took place.
So he is down in the runoff, and that, that's not out yet. Okay, here we go. Watch it here, Bill.
Okay, coming down the straight, and it looks like he's already slowing down quite a bit. Look at the flames inside the car. Holy man. Yeah, see, the door is open right there.
Watch, there
now,
it
I
is.
bet you he has triggered the onboard fire system right there. A lot of what was inside the car right there just disappeared, so he must have tripled. But holding his
Pace car.
helmet.
It is obviously just
Okay.
picked up the first car that came along to try and make sure that they got everything stopped down in there. And you can see, I'll tell you what, the IMSA safety team, which is one of the best in the business, is talking to Boris and giving him any attention and any concern that he needs. And having those guys there, that is huge. And you can also see the rest of the IMSA safety team. Boy, these guys do an incredible job. And
They
the
are.
drivers, it makes you very comfortable when you are racing to know you've got a crew like this that should something go awry, they're there for you.
Definitely. You know, the one thing I'm thinking of right now is I'm not sure that they're going to get this race restarted because that car is in potentially a very dangerous area should somebody else go down there on an emergency.
Well, Bill and Greg, I'm down here at the Lou Gelati Racing Pit, and obviously they can't confirm what
happened there, as they haven't seen the car yet. But Lou's speculating that when he had contact with that BMW we saw a while back, he says he thinks that broke something inside the cockpit. Then they had smoke in there and obviously just caught fire. But he thinks that it may have something to do with that contact earlier with the BMW.
Okay.
So, you know, it's funny when I watch that, like I'll never forget that. You know, I've been racing for 38 years, and when you start racing, you're a young guy, you just want to go fast, and you don't really think about safety. It's something you never really think about. You just want to go fast until it goes wrong. You know, over 38 years, I've had 10 concussions, a skull fracture, been on fire twice, broken ribs twice, broken arm twice, and you know, as things start to happen, and you get older, you start thinking about it when you get on that last straightaway, like, I better make sure. And you know, the most important thing about safety to me as a driver is you need that plan before you ever go to the racetrack. You know, you need to have the right equipment, put on the right equipment, you know, make sure your guys are doing the right things with the car. And when you're in the car, being familiar how do I take the wheel, where's the fire extinguisher, just so it's second nature so you don't have to think about it. And the funny thing about that weekend was I wasn't supposed to race here that weekend. It's been a few years since I raced here, and I got a call, you know, the week, like 4 or 5 days before, hey, do you want to drive my Corvette at Long Beach? I'm like, yeah, why not? It's now only an hour away. I'll drive up there and drive it. And the night before, I took the crew guys out to K1 Speed. We have one in Torrance. And I remember the crew chief asked me, he goes, well, what suit are you going to wear? And I'm like, you know, I have a million suits, but I go, you know, 3 years earlier, I'm going to quick do the story. I was going to race a Corvette, factory Corvette in the LMS race with Dale Earnhardt Jr. And I don't know if anybody remembers that. In morning warm-up on the first lap, he spun the car, crashed into the barrier, and it burst into flames, and he got burned pretty good. And it was just the craziest thing that happened so fast, and it was so bad. And, you know, I met him when they brought him into the infield care center, and he was hurting pretty bad. And they loaded him up in a helicopter and cut his suit off and took him to the hospital. And I said, don't worry, I'll get all your stuff. And at the time, you know, my wife wasn't even at the track, and my son was like 6 months old, and we had like a little Geo Metro rent-a-car. And so I'm collecting all his stuff, and I got his suit that, you know, he burned up in. I mean, I had that in the back seat, and we're driving now up to Sacramento in our little Geo Metro, like, oh my God, you know, this is crazy. And it's like the whole way, like, my wife said, what smells? You know, and the race suit smelled like this old campfire log. I pulled over and put it in the back in the trunk. And, you know, then we're driving up there, and I figured, man, he doesn't have any clothes. I better get him something to wear when he gets out. So I stopped at a Nike outlet store and bought him the ugliest sweatsuit I could find. It was purple and gold, like a basketball player, and that's what I brought him for clothes. But, you know, so I actually never wore that suit. And so, you know, I never really raced the car, and I just hung it up in a K1 Speed framed. And sure enough, my suit now smells exactly the same as his. I still have it. But what happened in that crash, you know, I've been in a lot of crashes all my life, and, you know, the big impacts are mostly, you know, something happens, you get knocked out, and you wake up and like, all right, you know, you do a little check. That's fine. Ooh, that's a problem. I'll check that later. And, you know, you go through this thing in your head. But what was different about this incident is I didn't crash. I came off the hairpin, shifted up like 3 gears, and all of a sudden the car it was like a flamethrower from the back. You know, came just right by me. And for the first couple seconds, I panicked like a little baby. You know, I must have said F, 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 you know, because it was just burning the back of my neck. The heat was just incredible. And like in 2 to 3 seconds of that, I got this moment of clarity where I go, man, this is bad. Shut your mouth, no matter what, shut your mouth. And I had just been yelling like, yeah, F, 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 F. You know, I can't say it in here, but I was swearing pretty good. And then I got this moment of clarity where I'm like, I got to be calm about this. Shut your mouth, don't do anything. And second of all, you know, the way the straightaway is on Long Beach, just this long, fast curve, I go, your instinct is slam the brakes and get out of the car. But I'm like, I'll get run over if I do that. I'll cause a huge accident. So I'm like, I got to get to the end of the straightaway no matter what. And from the time it started to the time I got out was 18 and a half seconds. And that 18 and a half seconds felt like, you know, an hour to me. I can remember every split second. Trying to drive down the straightaway, just completely engulfed in flames. And it wasn't so much the flames, but the heat in the car. It was so hot. And, you know, when I got to the end, then it was just like, okay, you know, this is what I learned. You know, anything that happens bad, the most important thing is to stay calm. So I finally got to the end of the straightaway down the runoff road, and I just did this checklist, you know, okay, get your everything off your helmet, you know, unplug your radio, now do the belts, now I got to get the steering wheel under the seat and put the steering wheel up, and then, you know, and the whole time I'm doing this, I am completely engulfed in flames. And I have my wife, a fan sent me pictures from the grandstands, and I'm just completely engulfed in flames. And I have it on my phone, and you can't even see me in it, you know, and you're just like, how did I survive that? You know, and I got out, passed out because I never took a breath. I was just screaming like a baby for the first 2.5 seconds, and then, you know, got that moment of clarity. But, you know, that was one of your suits. You know, I've worn every suit, you know, known to man because I've raced everything. But, you know, we've met, you know, 30 years ago when I raced Le Mans for the first time, and, man, you've been a good friend ever since, and I love kicking your ass on the golf course. That never got old. But, you know, this here, when you look back on it, you know, it was a real learning experience for me, you know, because I've seen other people catch on fire, and I really notice it now, because when you're in that club of sitting in that heat for 18 and a half seconds, it is awful. You know, it's the worst thing that, you know, could really happen to you in racing. But having a good plan, having the right equipment, you know, is everything. And I think younger drivers, it's hard to tell them that, because I remember when I was young, you know, 38 years ago racing, you know, you just wanted to drive. You didn't care. You never thought about that, but until it happens, you know. So that's something that I think now more people are taking it a lot more seriously, and I think even the younger guys now are way better than the older guys like us were. You know, I drove cars that I knew weren't safe, but it didn't matter to me at the time. And now I'm a little more picky, you know, when I get in the car. But you know, that was it didn't really show what it looked like in the car in that video, but I mean, that 18 and a half seconds of driving down the straightaway, and, you know, flames are one thing, but it's hard, you can't see through fire. So, you know, I was driving out, trying to look out the right window, and I figured I scraped the wall a few times, like kind of like Braille, but I knew if I got down to the end of the straightaway, there'd be somebody with a fire extinguisher there, and it was a better chance of nobody running me over. And so that's why I decided to do that. But I was in a car, you know, I remember they tried to take me to the hospital, and I refused because I remember my car was parked on the beach, and I didn't really want to go to the Long Beach hospital. And the safety workers did a really good job putting stuff on me, and I tried to drive home. And the funny story here, which is, it's a little crazy, my wife was at home with her friend, and she was in the kitchen, and she goes, "What's burning?" She kept asking her friend, "Something's burning." And then 15 minutes later, I called her and I said, "Hey, if you see it on TV, don't worry, I'm fine. I'm on my way home. I'm fine. There was a fire. I'm fine." So that was something. We still talk about that every once in a while when we see a fire or we smell something burning in the house. But so I tried to drive home, which probably wasn't the smartest thing, because my head was swelling up, my eyes were swelling shut, and the next day, actually, my head looked like a pumpkin because all the water, the heat goes up in there. And but I barely made it home with one eye at the very end, and I made it by about an hour before my eyes swelled shut and I couldn't see. But that was something. So, yeah. But thankful, you know, I had the right safety gear, and I was able to stay calm, which is the most important thing, and develop a plan in your head, even though, you know, what's happening around you is kind of chaotic. And, you know, I've kind of used that my whole life in racing. And, you know, now I'm always, you know, I make sure I have the right equipment. My equipment's in good shape. I make sure that when I'm in a car, I know how to get out. I know where everything is without thinking about it. You know, I've seen an IndyCar driver, one of my favorite guys, I won't say the name, but he pulled out of the pits and his car caught on fire. And, you know, in an IndyCar, you know, you can't tell it's on fire, but when you see him screwing around, and he panicked so much, he wouldn't have got out of that car. But luckily, some crew guys came over, reached in, unbuckled him, and pulled him out. And And that really, reinforced my thing that no matter what happens in life, whether you're working, whether you're doing anything, staying calm and try to have that plan in your head is a big deal. And especially in safety, planning ahead.
I like what you say about having a plan, and also, like you say, getting into a different car, knowing how to get out of that car, because you often have to do that without being able to see anything.
Right, in every car you race, there's a different way to get out. There's different stuff hooked up. Maybe the way the wheel comes off, or in a Corvette, the wheel comes up. There's all different ways, and I used to not really think about that stuff, but when you have something like that, that was actually the second fire I've ever been in. This was a lot worse. The first one was real quick, but after that first one, happened at Lime Rock, Connecticut in a Mustang, I'm like, I need to figure this out, because that was uncomfortable. Yeah.
So as you rehearse that, getting out of the car and what to do in this car and that car, even if you might be groggy and all, part of that stays with you. That becomes automatic to know where you are and
If
get
you
yourself out of
practice
there.
it and think about it enough in your head, it's second nature. So, you might be groggy, but if you're on fire, you're going to have a little extra energy and to get out. You won't be groggy, trust me. And but yeah, I always had a plan after that, and that definitely sped up. When now when you go to a Trans Am race every year, they go, oh, you got to do an exit test, and I go, do I really have to? Trust me, I can get out of this thing. But that's really, it's good practice, and they do that now. They make everybody
make you
do an
do it,
exit test
yes.
in a certain amount of time. But what they don't tell you is, a lot of drivers, I was probably more for me because I drove so many different cars. Sometimes it's the first time I ever saw the car, and you got to get comfortable because every car is different on how you get out.
Yeah. Good, thank you. You mentioned the next generation, younger drivers, and you as a parent have a son, Boris Jr., who's been moving up, and now he's in the TA2 series.
Right.
What is his attitude? Does he listen to you? Has he learned by himself?
It's funny.
What's happening with that younger generation?
Is growing up as a parent, he never listens to me. But in racing, that's the only thing he listens to me. Like, I'm credible for that. So my wife is like, I can't believe he listens to you. I go, that's the only thing. Everything else he knows more than I know. And he actually does. But, it's something that we do together. And, I never thought, when he was born and I was racing all over the world, I was on the road 275 days a year. I bought him the go-kart and the dirt bike, everything way too early, and he had no interest in racing. And I'm like, well, okay, I'm not going to be that guy and push him into it. And, for years, even though we owned a company called K1 Speed and we had all these go-kart tracks, he didn't want to do it. I'm like, no problem. He has other interests. That's fine. But then 4 years ago, he got an interest in it, and we started go-karting, and then he got a little Miata, and now he's racing the SCCA TA2 class. And 90% of me loves it. It's the most fun spending time with your kid doing it. But when he's on the track, I am a disaster. I hate it. And it's not so much, I don't worry about him getting hurt because I know, we take all the precautions, we have all the right stuff, we practice the plan, we do all that stuff. For me, it's more, I've made every stupid mistake a driver could even think of in a race car. And those embarrassing mistakes or the mistakes that happen, the flat tire, all the things that can destroy your day in racing is what I get nervous about. And it's hard to watch as a parent. And I'm kind of a helicopter dad anyway. But in racing, boy, it's hard for me. It's the most fun until he's in a car. And then I get a little nervous. So I'm sure, I had no idea what I put my mother through and my wife through all those years, getting hurt, racing, because, you don't care, I mean, as soon as that fire was done, I was in a car 2 weeks later. It just never ever thought about, it was never a deterrent getting hurt. But, I just love it, yeah.
Sir, what caused the fire, and would you consider a balaclava in the future?
Here, pardon me, can
Yeah.
we,
So he asked me what caused the fire, and would I consider a balaclava in the future? Yes, now I always wear one. I mean, that made me tune up my safety a lot. But what happened was, early in the race, me and the factory BMW, Joey Han, we just touched. And when we touched, it bent the exhaust tip in, and it actually heated up the carbon fiber resin, right? I remember getting this awful, like toxic smell and burning my eyes for a few laps. And the resin caught on fire, and then it burned the fill line going to the fuel cell. And when it splashed, it just lit up. So, most times you crash in a car and, it's a big event. And when it stops, you do your check and you get out, or you wake up and it's over. This was, I was awake the whole time. And it was, even though it was only 18 and a half seconds, it felt like a lot longer. Yep. Yes. Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Good to see you.
Caitlin Nard still
It really is?
Yes.
Wow.
Believe it or not, we're from
This is,
town.
So Judy Stropus.
Judy
we're from-
Stropus.
She's from Connecticut, and there used to be like, you take somebody to this fancy restaurant. Where do you want to eat? Chez Leonard. It's a hot dog stand. It's a cart on the side of the road. And it makes the best hot dogs, and the guy has been there for like a lot longer than I've been alive, I guess. Yeah.
But there's also a cafe now called Bobo's. So, and people need to know that Ron Fellow's son used to call Boris Uncle Bobo.
Yeah.
And so I still call him Uncle Bobo.
Well, now he's 6'6", and he weighs like 250.
Yeah,
He's a little big guy.
he's probably an adult and retired already.
Yeah.
So I did have a question. So I'm watching and I'm saying, get out, get out, get out. I never actually saw you get out of the car until I saw you with the workers on the side.
Yeah.
What was I know you kind of talked about it, but your wherewithal about,
So I remember it so clearly, and I don't remember what I did yesterday, but this is something that's etched in or burned into my brain. And when I finally stopped the car and I knew I wasn't going to get hit, I slowed everything down even more. And I remember the funniest thing that happened. I just said, okay, first thing, get your air hose off, unplug your radio. Okay, now do the belch. Now I got to get the steering wheel. And when I pulled it's a little lever under the steering column. When I pulled my hand back, I'm just on fire. And all the, I had these cheap gloves on, sorry. And, but all the seams melted at the exact same time, and my glove opened up like a flower. And I remember for like a split second going, that's really weird. And then I was like, okay, now get out now. And it was strange, but it just turned into slow motion. And for some reason, after the initial, I probably in my head as I was driving down to that straightaway, I must have said the F word maybe 100 times, like, F, it's hot, holy crap, it's hot. Like, how could it be this hot? But at the very end, when I slowed everything down, I just remember after that lever, pulling my hand out, my glove went like a flower. I go, that's really weird. But, so I got out on my own, and I kind of passed out next to the car for a second just because I had no air. And this big safety guy's on me, like, seeing if I was all right. I go, hey, I'm okay now. You can get off. But, I just had to catch my breath. But yeah. So it took a while just because I wanted to make sure I was out of harm's way. I didn't want to, it would have been worse if I, caused a huge wreck.
you think electric cars would make it easier?
So I'm a car dealer.
We'll talk about that.
And I sell electric cars, but I'm not a fan of electric cars. I like the sound of gas, and that's it. I'm not ever going to drive one.
All right.
Yeah.
John Dingle has a question here.
Actually, most people in this room probably don't know that Judy Stropus is a very famous songwriter. My Time Is Your Time?
My time is your time. You didn't get that much of a laugh, sorry, John.
So Judy had to put up with me back in '94 when we were racing all around the world with Callaway in the GT series, which was a lot of fun. All right. I lost my luggage going to China for the first international race they ever had. And you can't find pants that fit somebody like me in Zhuhai. They're very little.
I will tell the funny story about Boris and his eating habits. He will only eat certain things, and he brought a lot of it with him to China, like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and he would eat spaghetti. At the time, there was a story in the local Zhuhai newspaper saying that 4 million rats found under the pier. And so at dinner, when we were ordering, and we ordered spaghetti, and they asked if you wanted meat sauce. and I said, and I reminded him of the story I read in the paper, and he pushed all the meat to the side.
It was a little different racing over there. Yeah, I like the USA and France, Europe, not China.
Dean?
Getting back to your role as a parent, have you vetoed any cars for your son to get into where it's like, this is not safe? And what's your advice on that from, I don't know if we have any parents in the audience, but, you know, you said you got into cars you knew weren't safe. Now how do you approach it, you know, with your son?
Well, that's the one thing he really takes my advice on, and luckily we haven't had that decision where it's a car I looked at and said wasn't safe, so we haven't had to do that. And all the cars we get in, we make sure, you know, because it's so easy to overlook that, you know, the details, because all, as a driver, you care about is getting out on the track, you know, trying to show you can do it, you know, trying to get to the next car, the bigger ride, or the faster car. And, but, you know, it's something that you shouldn't overlook. And that's what I've learned in my 38 years of driving. So being able to pass that to him, I think he kind of gets it. Where when I started, I had nobody telling me anything. So, you know, I don't think three of me don't add up to an idiot. So back then, I was just doing it for the love of the game, and I still do it for the love of the game. But I didn't think about safety, or I didn't care what happened. You know, it was just I want to go fast. Yes.
What was the most technically best car you drove?
Ooh. I've been really lucky because I've driven a lot of cars. You know, like getting the pole at Le Mans the first time there in the Callaway Corvette. I mean, that was a fantastic car. Winning Nürburgring in the factory BMW GT3 with a flat crank motor, and that was one of the best sports cars I've ever driven. You know, but I like them all. You know, I mean, I like the NASCAR at Daytona. I like, you know, they're all good. But those two or three were pretty special cars.
Tell us a little bit about NASCAR, getting into that as an outsider, and how were you accepted, and adjusting to the car. What was different about that?
That's a funny story. I mean, I was actually, you know, one day I was, you know, racing for BMW. I raced for BMW for 15 years. And I was on my way to a race in Mosport, Canada, and I was at a layover in Hartford, Connecticut, and waiting for a plane. And it was right after. I mean, I just got my first cell phone, and the phone rings, and it's this guy, Travis Carter. He just sounds like a, you know, good old Southern boy, and he owns the team that Jimmy Spencer drives, and it was sponsored by Winston Cigarettes in the Winston Cup Series. And he's telling me that, you know, Jimmy, he got a concussion in Indy the week before, and he was looking for somebody to come to Watkins Glen and, you know, practice and qualify the car, and then relief drive for Jimmy, so Jimmy could get the points. And as he's talking to me, you know, I'm walking back to the U.S. Air counter, looking at flights to Charlotte, thinking, and he goes, "When could you get there?" And I'm like, "I could be there by 4 today," right? Because I'm just looking at the flights. And so he asked me, "Yeah, I'll do it." And I remember hanging up the phone and then calling the team owner for BMW, Tom Milner, and say, "Hey, I have a chance to do a NASCAR Cup race. I really want to do it. Will you let me do it?" And the good thing about sports car racing, there's always 10 guys behind you that'll be happy to take your seat. So, you know, he was nice enough to let me do it. And I remember I went down there, and this is a funny story, you know, it was like the movie Days of Thunder. I knew nothing about NASCAR. And I walked into the shop, and they're getting the car, just about to put it in the trailer and go. I mean, this is 3 days before the race, you know, was going to start. And, like, they didn't even have a suit for me. And one of the most amazing things to me is when I got there, there was a suit with my name that they made. And I'm like, how did they do that so fast? You know, when I ordered a suit, it took like 6 months to get. You know, they didn't care about who I was. And but anyway, you know, we're sitting there, and Donnie Wingo was the crew chief, and he's a good old boy. And he was like, "Now, Boris, now, what kind of control arms you like? You like 7.5, 8.5, 9.5?" And I'm like, "Well, you know, I've never driven one of these, and so I don't know." I go, "You know, if you just put whatever you think's on there, and I'll tell you, you know, if the car's tight or loose." And so then he asked a couple other questions, and then he goes, "You know, what about caster? You like a lot of caster or a little caster?" And I'm like, "Well, I got to remind you once again, you know, I've never driven one of these things." So we go to the track, we go to Watkins Glen, and normally the way NASCAR in the old days when they had practice and qualifying, the first hour session of practice, you're just practicing qualifying. So that means you're taping the front up and you're doing one lap on new tires, and then you cool the motor down, you practice one lap, because they handle a lot better when they're all taped up, more downforce. And I asked the team owner, I go, hey, do you mind, since I've never driven one of these things, maybe I could just run around a bunch of laps, no tape or anything. And he goes, yeah, no, but that's a good idea, you're right. So I drive about 20, 25 laps around the track, comes on the radio, and he goes, hey, Boris, he goes, there's one thing, he goes, you might be slow right now, but man, you sure are leading the lap count. He goes, now, you ready to try some tires? And I think I was like 37th on the board or something. And I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. So they come in, they cool it all down, put the stickers on it. I go out, and I go to third on the board. And that changed my life, like in racing. Like I was a nobody before then, did a lot of sports cars, but now all of a sudden I was running with the big guys. And I remember that night. So the next day now, we do all the practice, everything. Then Sunday comes, and it's the morning of the race. And all my guys, calling all weekend from Canada are like, what's going on? He goes, you going to put donuts right down the side of Dale Earnhardt's car when you go by him? And they're joking around. And I am nervous as I've ever been. I've never been nervous. And in the morning, just before driver intros, I'm sitting there on the pit wall, just like, oh my God, I can't do this. This is crazy. And I hear a guy go, hey, Boris, how's Boris going to do today? And I look up, and I remember seeing Dale Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace and Mark Martin in the group, and I just looked back down, hey, Boris. And I looked up, and it was Dale Earnhardt talking to me. And I was like, and he goes, how you going to do today? I go, hopefully stay on the road, Like, I was just like, I can't believe he's talking to me. And so, it's just like, this is unbelievable. So race starts, Jimmy Spencer starts the car, 9 laps, there's a caution. We do a driver change on pit road where those cars really aren't made to be. Now I'm in a car where the seat's this wide, I'm just flopping around in it. There's no safety at all, but I didn't care. And I ran pretty good. I think I finished 14th from the back. And that actually, springboarded my career, where I was this NASCAR road course ringer. They called and called and called all the time. But it led to my funniest story in racing. So during the race, I remember coming out of turn 1, and the next car ahead of me, because I'm going through the field like nothing. I'm like, man, these guys are easy to pass. They can't brake for shit. And I'm going by all these guys, and the next car is Dale Earnhardt. And as we go through the S's, I'm thinking what my buddy said, Mark, like, you're just going to give him a donut down the side. And I'm nervous again, and I get a run down the back straightaway, and you're at that point where you're like, do I go or not go? And I was just thinking, maybe one more lap. And all of a sudden, I see this hand coming out the window, and he just waved me by. And I'm like, when I went by, like, holy crap. And so after that race, Dale Earnhardt actually hired me to teach his kid, Dale Jr., how to do road racing. And I went up and, did 2 days with him, and we became great friends. We just met, all my friends are all in the racing world. Everybody I've ever met, all the acquaintances, it's just my people where I feel at home are racing. Now I have this big car dealership, I'm proud of it, but it doesn't feel like home to me. When I'm at the racetrack, that's where I feel at home, whether it's an SCCA regional or it's here at Long Beach. So, skipping back ahead after teaching Dale Earnhardt Jr., every once in a while, whenever a senior saw me at a track, and people that know me, I talk to everybody. I don't have a problem talking to anybody. But Dale Earnhardt Sr. was the one guy that would make me just speechless, just nervous and intimidated, and like, oh my God, he's the man. And he would always come up to me, how's Sed doing today? And he'd grab me by the neck, and I'd be like, good, I'm okay. I could never talk to the guy. Until one day at Watkins Glen, and this is my biggest memory of racing, it's not even on the racetrack. He goes, hey man, I'm running like crap. And he kind of grabs me by the neck. He goes, come down to my car. And we're walking down to his car. There was about 16 cars testing at Watkins Glen. I was running a Jimmy Spencer car, and I was running really fast. And so he goes, come on man, I'm running like crap. You do me a favor and take my car for a few laps? And I'm like, you want me to drive the Black 3? He goes, will you fit in it? You think you can fit in it? And I get in this car, and he sat all leaned back, and my knees are in my chin, and And he's kind of leaning in the side. He goes, man, said, you don't fit very good in there, do you? And I go, no, but I feel like a bad mother effer in this thing. I go, this is unbelievable. He goes, can you drive it? I go, I'll drive it on one condition. I go, and I was just kind of kidding. I go, I know I'm the only race fan you ever let drive this thing. I go, I want a picture of me driving this thing. And he's like, get out of here. So I go over, I get my stuff on, I put my helmet on with a big Ford sticker on it, and I take his car out, did like 3 laps, and come in. And when I came in, there must have been 30 photographers in the garage. And I'm like, man, he ain't kidding around. But it was more for that no one ever drives his car. And pulled in, and he pulled the window net down, and then everybody's just looking at me, waiting to hear what I was going to say. And I'm like, man, this is weird. I still feel like a little idiot from Connecticut, like, driving to the racetrack in my car. And I go, man, this car sucks. I go, if you drove my car, you wouldn't get back in this thing. Just kind of joking. He goes, come on. So we get in the hauler. We go to the front of his hauler with his crew chief, Kevin Hamlin, Dale Earnhardt, and me sitting there. And I give him this laundry list of things. I go, the first thing I said, I go, first of all, your brakes, it's like stepping on a piece of steel. I go, you need a smaller master, get a little feel in there. He goes, man, I told them guys I wore my leg out at Sears Point, and they don't listen. And I'm like, they don't listen to you? I'm thinking in my head. So I continue on. I give them like, let's change second and third gear. Let's change the rear springs. Let's change the front springs and the front bar. And he goes to the guy, Kevin Hamlin, he goes, change it all, man, because he's writing everything down. He goes, let me know when you get it all in there. I'll be here. And so now it's just me and him in the front of the hauler sitting there. And I'm trying to think of something cool to say. And Airplane 2 is on the TV, and I go, man, that's a funny movie, huh? And he goes, yeah, I like that guy. And he gets up, and he walked out of the lounge. I'm like, God, that's the best you could say. Right? And all of a sudden, it's just me sitting there now, and he yells, he goes, hey, Sid, you want anything to eat? And I'm like, yeah, make me a peanut butter and jelly, and cut the crust off, and hurry it up. And it was like, nothing. And I'm like, God. Shit. I mean, if there was a front door, I would have ran out the front door, right? I would have left. I'm like, you idiot, because I get nervous. I just start getting sarcastic. And all of a sudden, there he comes. It seemed like an hour, but it was like 2 minutes. He comes up with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on a paper towel. He goes, I got your water too, man. I go, hey, you didn't cut the crust off. He goes, no, man, it makes your hair curly. I don't want to ruin your look. and we actually sat there and ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I thought, man, I've made it in racing now. I mean, he was the coolest guy, and that was a sad day when we lost him because of a safety thing. I mean, lucky, it was a seatbelt. It was just, something that happened. But one of the greatest memories of my life, that guy, and he was a down to earth guy that just once you got past all the Black 3 stuff, he was just a great guy. Like you are. So, yeah. And I never beat him on the golf course. He didn't play golf. But
Great story. We have some other question here. I see. I'll come over there. Say your name.
I'm Ian Berwick I work for Paget Racing now. I've known Boris since '93, I think, if I remember right. He and I worked together at Skip Barber. You're an average size guy to me. I'm 6'6". Are there any cars you didn't fit into, or that were really
there was a
hard to
lot
get
I
out?
didn't fit comfortably, but I make myself fit into anything.
Because seeing you climb out of the Corvette, it looks like you end up, I don't know if you could like climb out and stay on your feet, or because there have been cars that I have a hard time getting out of, that literally I just plan on doing a tuck and roll to
Right.
get away from it, if it ever comes to that.
That was a tuck and roll just because I was in a hurry, and I just wanted it out. I was done with that car at that point. Yeah.
So I have a question. You've not only driven a lot of cars, you've raced with a lot of organizations. Are there organizations where the drivers are rougher or dirtier than others, or are we all just universal assholes?
Oh, no. I mean, when you race sports cars and you go to NASCAR, I mean, it's like the WWF. I mean, NASCAR is rough, and it's hard racing, and sports car guys whine a lot. One little bump, they whine. The officials get involved. Where in NASCAR, you settle it yourself. Because if they race so much week in and week out, if you cheap shot a guy, it's going to come back to you the next week. So there's more respect there, but it's really hard racing. And I think the only other kind of sports car road racing I experienced like that was V8 Supercar in Australia when I did a few races over there. I mean, they were rough too. And I love that. I mean, I think that's the best. But yeah, I think sometimes here in sports cars, just the officials get too involved. Yeah.
Why don't we have one more question? And I think I see it right now. Judy?
Well, you mentioned, losing Dale Senior, but then the Hans device came from that,
Yep.
which was very
It-
important safety.
That's the weird thing. Like, it takes tragedy to make change. I remember when they lost the IndyCar driver at Laguna Seca, I mean, why aren't there tires in that wall? And it's like, it's like you have to have that plan before. And a lot of times over the years, it wasn't there, but it's gotten better and better and better and better. Yeah, I think. And so as a parent, I feel a lot better about racing now than when I started, for sure.
Finish up, if you would, with about your son, how he's gotten to where he is. I know the Silver Hair Racing folks there. And what's ahead for that? Do you go with him to every race, and how does that work?
Yeah, so this year, it's funny you say that, so I love going to the races with him. We have a little plane, we fly around together. And it's funny, because of my age now, I'm actually a bronze driver. So, I got a call from a famous, manufacturer CEO when I was in the airport about, 3 months ago. And they were looking for somebody to do Le Mans because I'm a bronze rated driver. I'm like, oh, that'd be so cool. And my son's like, you got to go do it. And I went over to Europe and tested, and then, okay, they want to hire me for the year, but they wanted me to do all these WEC races, which were like 11 races or 10 races or all around the world. And I'm like, man, as much as I wanted to do it, it was the first time in my life I said no, because there's no way I could be in, Japan racing while my son's racing over here, and I would have missed like 6 races. And I'm like, I can't do that. I already had my time. And I still do a little Trans Am racing. I'm going to do one more NASCAR race in Sonoma. That'll be my last one. So, I mean, there's probably a reason why 61-year-olds aren't racing NASCAR, but I'm still going to give it a try. No, they aren't, but I will be. But yeah, so I won't miss any of his races.
Great. Well, thank you, Boris.
Thank you.
Eve. I see in the back of the room Jim McCallion, who is the head of the whole Long Beach Grand Prix Association and this event, has taken a couple minutes of his time with all the demands he has on his time. He's spending a couple minutes with us. Jim, do you want to say a couple things?
Thank you very much, Don, and on behalf of the Grand Prix, let me say how excited we are to be able to host another one of these safety seminars. We started this back, how many years ago now?
15.
15 years ago, small group, small level of interest at the time, but, we feel is very significant. The whole idea of safety and how it's integrated into our sport is really critical, and as Boris said, if you've been driving cars for a long time, you realize the advances that have been created in terms of safety and how much easier it is and more safe it is to drive the cars today than it was years ago. All you have to do, as an example of that, is go down and take a look at one of those historic Indy cars and take a look at the early ones, the 60s, the 70s, and look where their feet are in conjunction with the front axle. And that tells you everything in the world about how much safety has advanced. Because after the spoiler was gone, guess what was next? And a lot of drivers were walking around, limping around because of that. It's things like that and so many other modifications that, you get in a car today and there's a feeling of a much safer kind of an environment and atmosphere than there. But anyway, congratulations to Eves and the whole Stand 21 team. We're delighted to have this. This has become an institution here, and they turn out today is fabulous. It's indicative of how much effort's gone into this, and you're to be congratulated on the success here. And I hope you have a very delightful weekend joining us here. We have 4 races today. We got 4 races tomorrow. So there's plenty of on-track action. And if you go down in expo, which you had to walk through to get here anyway, go by the Cooler Master display. It's right in the middle next to the Acura thing. And they have these really cool, high-end, sophisticated simulators. Go down and see how fast you can drive a Long Beach circuit in an Acura, okay? Thank you very much.
Merci. Thank you.
Stay here.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. That was great, having Boris here and then Jim. But we're going to move on to the next topic. The presenter is a man I have seen in videos, but I just met him in person the last couple of days, and that's Dr. Claude Beistelman, who'll be coming up here. And I knew that he had done work with heat stress and Stand 21 in the Army, the French Army, and he's also been very active with Le Mans and Classic Le Mans, another number of activities with the different races in France and beyond. And Yves, you've known him longer than I have. Tell us about how you got connected with Dr. Beistelman.
Oh, it's easy.
I don't play golf, first of all.
It's better for the golf. It's better for the golf course. And I think when I know Claude, it was some years ago. I met him in a rally. Claude is completely. It's a big professor in France in medicine, but he's more addict with racing.
Nobody is perfect.
And addict. When I tell addict, he's like a bibliothèque. You know, he knows everything, and he's been everywhere. And he was in Monaco, he's been in Le Mans, he's been in WRC Championship, and he's really also passionate and somebody who has a lot of common sense. And he was in 1999, I think, the FIA get problem with stress in a Turkish rally and a Greek rally, and FIA asked him to make a study to know if when you race with a racing suit or race with a T-shirt, because the driver didn't want to wear racing suits, he proved that he was safer and more comfortable and better for the body temperature and and for the skin to wear a racing suit with a good underwear if your racing suit is breathing. And he make a proof on that, and after we were making study with Dr. Trammell, Terry, you know, and we were working together to prove to everybody. And it's how we proved that in 1999, but I started to make a stretching material in 1984 with two young drivers. One was Ayrton Senna, the other one was Alain Prost. Okay, that's when we discovered the stretching fabric. Thank you to everybody. Now, let's talk Claude now.
Thank you, Yves, from these kind words. If I can have... So just to start, I'm just the opposite from Boris said. When I start to be involved in motorsports, my concern was more safety and I was really a pro racing driver. So just the opposite. So I was CMO for the Formula E in Paris and also DCMO in Le Mans for a couple of events. And I made this presentation with my very good friend Benoît Pommier, who is now CMO in Monaco for the Formula One and also the E Grand Prix. So now we have more and more categories with hybrid or fully EV cars. Formula One, hybrid cars, you know, in WEC started almost 10 years ago. We have also some full electric single-seater Formula, the Formula E with a World Championship, and now we have also hybrid cars in rally. So we have more and more categories, including either hybrid or IV cars, and we have, you can see this category, also rallycross with a WRX, and the more complicated category was ETCR. You are not familiar. The FIA organized this championship just for a year. So we had some big hydrogen tanks just green hydrogen to produce electricity. So it was really a crazy problem because we have major concern with e-car, but also with the safety concerning hydrogen. So the first question, you know, as a CMO, but also as a marshal or extrication team, we have to know how to identify these cars. So it can depend. For example, we have the green light, the numbers. So that's the white numbers on the red presentation, you know, for no LMD and LMDH cars. We have several special stickers because we have some specific circuit breaker with a big E. And for example, we have also for the hybrid rally cars some lights next to the windshield or on the side of the car. We have also, it was the case in single-seater Formula, like Formula E, we have some switch and specific lights just in front of the driver. So for my presentation, we will have several aspects. The first one is we have to know if there are some specific risks, because motorsports is dangerous, but are there some specific risks due to hybrid or EV cars? Because there are some specific risks, and you must be aware of them, we need some specific regulation, and I will give you a few words. And the big question for the marshals, for the extrication team, for the medical team is the kind of protective equipment which is required in case of accident. Even if you don't have fire, you need some specific equipment. And each time we are organizing some session, whatever the event, we need to train the people, and there is a real learning process. The FIA has been deeply involved in that. And a specific problem is the problem of thermal runaway, and I shall give you a few words on this problem because it can last for a couple of hours, even after the accident. So, are there specific risks? Of course, there are specific risks because you have high voltage. And high voltage in the car, in case of accident, can produce electrical shock. You are all familiar with electrical shock because one day in your life you put your fingers in a socket. Everybody should be familiar with that. Electric discharge or electric arc will occur very rarely. The real problem is the electrical shock. And be aware that's not a problem of voltage, but much more a problem of intensity and duration where you are exposed. You know, that's very clear. If you have some few milliamps, well, that's electrical shock. You are familiar with that. If you are watching some cartoons, you know, sustained muscular contraction, you have seen that, you know. If you are above 30 milliamps, then it can become dangerous because you can have a paralysis of the respiratory muscles. And when you reach 40 milliamps, ventricular fibrillation, cardiac arrest, and even if the intensity is greater, there is a risk of burns and cardiac arrest. And of course, this third-degree burns. I'm sorry, this slide will be partly in French, but just remember, it's not only a problem of intensity, but a problem of times. 30 milliamps during 5 seconds, your life expectancy will be around 50%. But if you are exposed to 300 milliamps only during 0.5 seconds, then you have a 50% life expectancy. And of course, it will depend if your skin is wet or dry, but that's another issue. Let's forget it. The problem, you have a risk, of course, of electrical shock. But you can have, due to batteries, some chemical risk. And these chemical risks are very often underestimated. And these burns due to battery can induce skin damage, head damage, and the most important risk is respiratory problem, and I will give you a few slides on that. So the problem, people are trained with observable risk. They wear gloves over shoes, that's fine. The real most dangerous problem is the flame and the toxic fumes, and we still need improvement in the way we deal with this kind of problems. So each time there is a new category designed for hybrid or EV cars. The first thing, the batteries. So for a specific regulation, you will be asked to be able to demonstrate that your battery are very safe and they can resist to crash test. Double insulation is mandatory. I think maybe Eric will talk more about that. Everything should have a double insulation, and we need independent circuit breaker. One can be used directly by the driver. An accident, he has his own circuit breaker to make the car safe. But we also need, outside of the car, some external emergency circuit breaker in case the driver becomes unconscious. So this emergency circuit breaker will be triggered by any default that can be the battery, the wiring, what you want, isolation failure, but they should be designed to trigger this circuit breaker. And of course, for any new category, for every car, there will be a full homologation process in Europe that's through the FIA. And there is a simple rule. An hybrid or electric race car must be as safe as any other car. So, for example, the last category created was hybrid rally cars. And for hybrid rally cars, so the whole hybrid unit is behind the driver, but of course this is in a crash-proof carbon casing. And it was very safe. And remember, on any hybrid or electrical car, you should have some green light. And as a marshal, when you become close to an hybrid or electrical car, you must check the light which are disposed. That depends on the car, but you should look at the car. If it's green, it's safe. So there is a very simple policy with all these kind of cars. Green light means there is no risk anymore with the electrical device. Red, it's dangerous. Don't touch the car without any specific equipment. If you cannot see green or red light, consider it is like a red light. And we have also introduced, for example, in the rally car, we have also a safety sound alert. So it means that when the marshal or the extrication team will come next to the car, if there is the safety sound, it means that's like a red light. So for example, for the LMD, the LMDH, you can have from both sides of the cockpit some green and red light. And you can see another example. This is the general circuit breaker for the marshals. And this general external circuit breaker will switch off the 12-volt system, but also the high voltage system. So it depends on the car. And we have also some specific extinguisher switch next to the circuit breaker. And just remember, not all the fires are due to electrical problems. These cars, first of all, they are some race cars. And for example, in the World Rally Championship, we had 2 cases of fire, one in 2022, one in 2023, but they were not produced by an electrical default. But remember, not all the fires are due to a problem with the electrical system. So the big issue is the use of protective equipment. So this is a training session during a World Rally Championship event. It was in Monaco. So some of this equipment are mandatory. If you don't have them, don't go next to the car. So at least, of course, fire and arc-resistant clothing for all the marshals. The gloves, specific gloves, class O gloves, and insulating overboots. This is the bottom level, overboots and gloves. But what is also required is some special mass stress, which can produce isolation. And in some cases, we have this hook, because with this hook, if we go next to the car, we can use them, in case of vapors, to set on the extinguisher system. And if the problem, of course, it's the race car, but because you have high voltage, the problem is also in the pit lane, with the mechanician, the engineers next to the car. And that's why, for example, in Formula E, we have some specific equipment. We are in front of each team garage. And so with gloves, but we have also the respirator mask in case of fire, and I will show you it can happen. And also we have an external automatic defibrillator every 2 cars. So that's a problem of safety, of course, for the driver, but also for the team, because you have some high voltage batteries in the garage. So never forget that. We need some specific equipment in the pit lane. So these are the kind of gloves, the overboots, also the protective cover, and I will show you some new devices which are really interesting, for example, for single-seater cars, and the specific hook. The problem, if the car turns red, you are part of the extrication team, or if you are a marshal, you must be very cautious. So you have to put some protective cover, and even if you are well trained, it will take a few seconds before you can go next to the driver. And for example, for single-seater, this is a new device which has been made by a French company. It's very interesting because we have an opening, so it's very fast to set up, this device for the single-seater cars, which could be hybrid or fully electric cars. And, it's very foldable, and that's not only to protect you about electrical shock, but it will protect you about thermal risk. The way it's designed is very interesting, and it's also homologated against chemical risk. They say it's also interesting for industrial espionage risk, but it's not my problem anymore. However, this kind of, but in Formula One, they are completely crazy, they watch every detail of the car, they have some spies. Wow, it's very strange. I think in the Formula, it's nicer, compared to the way it happens in Formula One. However, it's really efficient, this kind of new protective cover. The next step, as I told you, is the training of the team. Here in the US, it's a little bit different because you have the same people, not the marshals, but the extrication team, the safety team, the firemen. In some categories, they will do the whole season. In Europe or in Asia, it's completely different. You will have some people, working for the racetrack, and they will not be there for the next event. So in other words, each time you are attending an event, you have to be sure that the people are really well trained against electrical risk and the way you have to deal in case of accident. So who is concerned? Everybody. The race control with the race directors, the marshals, the extrication teams, and the medical team. So how can we deal with that? How can we do the best job? First of all, the FIA provides now some e-learning package. And so you can tell, for example, for the medical team, we send, the address of the package. And so every physician or every paramedic can train and learn using this package before the race. And then, when attending the race, it's obvious that the briefing before the race is very important Of course, we provide some extrication exercise to be sure that the marshal, the extrication team, and the medical team will work together perfectly. And for every event, we practice with a red car exercise. What is a red car exercise? We deal with a team, so they call us red light, so they inform it's, of course, prepared with the race control, and then we will ask all the people, firefighters, marshals, extrication team, and physician to attend the car, which will be somewhere on the racetrack, and then the exercise will be over just after bringing the car to the service park. So, as I told you, always wear, even if the light is green, I prefer to use overboots and gloves. And so we have what is called, in air safety, we have some to-do list. These to-do lists are provided. There is one for the marshals, one for the extrication team, one for the physician, and on this to-do list, we have very simple information. You know, we have no more than 15 lines, you know. If you are a marshal, wear the special gloves. Do you have the hook? And so, with a special glove, use the master switch and extinguisher. That's very simple, you know, and that's a very good way to teach the people. This is the to-do list for the extrication team. So we have different items. We have to check the safety device, and then we put the cover before extraction. For the medical team, it's very simple. In this to-do list, you know, in case of accident, you put your equipment on, and then you work with the extrication team. This is a case of red car exercise with one of my colleagues in Monaco. But something that I want to point is, even after the rescue, if the car has turned red, the car should never be left alone. As long as there is the red light, you should consider that the car is unsafe, and you should watch the car very carefully. This is why, for example, that's what happened in Sebring. You have a high voltage safe area, so even if there is a problem during the race, the car will stop there, and if it can turn green, okay, the car can go back racing. If the light is still red and you cannot solve the problem, it will go to a quarantine zone, which was called at Sebring Area 51, and then you keep the car there. It's a FIA process. I did not make any comments on that. And you know, in other words, never let this car red without any people around, and I'm going to tell you why. Because the main problem, I think, in my opinion, in the years to come, will be the risk of thermal runaway. I'm sorry this video does not work. It was a video of a bus in Paris, you know, because they had some problems with the batteries. In less than 30 seconds, this electrical bus was completely destroyed. So what is a thermal runaway? I think Eric knows much better than I know the problem. What is that? You have a battery is made of different cells. With just one cell in trouble, there will be a propagation to the other cells. So the problem can come from penetration, but it's very rare, deformation. we don't have many cases, but we have the feeling that most of the problems are due to overcharge or of a complete discharge. However, when a cell starts to be defective, it will propage to the whole battery, and you cannot stop that. And this is one of the first cases we had during racing. It was not during car racing, it was during moto, because now we have the Moto Grand Prix, and there are also some e-moto. And suddenly, during the night, the place, the garage where these 18 bikes were, completely burns in a few minutes, and the whole set of 18 bikes was completely destroyed. And in the official report, they say it was the result of a short circuit leading to an extreme amount of current and heat, and that's why he burned. So it can happen. Unfortunately, there was a problem with the other video. What happened, you know, it was in WRX last year. In less than 30 seconds, it was during charging of the batteries, the whole team, the truck, the area where you have all the facilities, and both cars completely burned in less than 30 seconds. This video should work. Okay, this is what happened, for example, with the penetration. You have a lot of smoke coming. So these smokes are very dangerous. So that's why we need some special protection with mask. And look, after the smokes, what happened? Fire. But the fire is delayed. And so, in my opinion, the most important safety concern are due to, you know, this problem of thermal runaway, inducing smoke and fumes. And the big issue is we don't know exactly what is the composition of the fumes. We talk about that with Eric. And that's dangerous because depending on the composition of a fume, the medical treatment will differ, and it's a real issue. And remember, thermal runaway, in case of deformation or penetration of the battery, can be delayed up to 72 hours. 72 hours. So this is why, in case of red light, we put a car in quarantine and we monitor it very carefully until the e-safety delegate solve the problem. But, you know, remember, it can burn several hours after the crash. And so, very simply, you know, it's important, one of the important messages is to wear protective glove and to know that you can use some firefighting foam, and in case of smoke, always wear a protection screen, because these smokes can be very dangerous even if you are outside. Maybe there will be some other challenges over the next years, because now we have hybrid cars in off-road racing. For example, this is the Audi prototype which won the Dakar. And can you imagine if you have a red light 200 kilometers from the race control? So we'll see what happens with the future, but it can be tricky. So if I have a few messages to bring, electrical fault, red light, don't touch the car, use protective equipment. But that's really rather straightforward. Be aware of the chemical hazard. I think it's the main risk for the marshal, the medical team, the extrication team. Always wear the protective equipment and also some facial protection because of the fumes, which are the main problem. So The next step, because we have been working with some people in the French Air Force, is to perform some crew resource management. So what is crew resource management? It's to make people from different areas, marshal, physician, extrication, and people who are not used, for example, and even people who are used to work together to perform better. And how can you perform better on safety? The questions are, do we perform a briefing? Because I think it's a key issue. Or do we work with our teammates in the most efficient way? Maybe you have been working with your teammates for a couple of years, but did you raise at least once a question, can we perform better? Can we improve the way we work together? We need a common language. Everybody must be clear and short. Short is an important issue. Don't spend 1 minute to explain something. Be short. And do you carry, if it's something important, maybe in US you practice it, but one of the key issues is the debrief. That's what we learned from the French Air Force pilots. Always perform a debrief to understand what you can improve. And that's why we have been sometimes in the events working with the French Air Force pilots using what is called potential optimization techniques. And because maybe you heard from the red flag over Las Vegas. Red flag is really for the fighter pilots, the event they are dreaming, because you have some fighter pilots coming from many NATO countries. One never know, that could be very useful in the years to come, I hope no. And all these fighter pilots, they fly together and really at the top level to improve the way they work together and to improve communication. And they have what they call potential optimization technique. And I think for safety concern, it can be something we should develop to perform better in the years to come. So thank you very much for staying for this presentation, and I think Eric will follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stick around. Great to see what you're doing there. First-hand knowledge, so many different series. And I've said before that we're here to connect and learn and all traveling down this path. And the FIA and the things they're doing here, certainly ahead of the field and everything. We went to the IMSA briefing with the teams the other day, and they follow a lot of the practices of the FIA. But we also have, in our country, other organizations. We have SCTA here, over in Bonneville and El Mirage. And they have a variety of cars. The cars are different. They're just getting into different electric vehicle class definitions, and they're trying to figure out how to do that safely and protect their people and give tools to their inspectors and safety recovery people. We have tracks like thermal, country club kind of a track, and a lot of tracks we find here in drag strips too will say, I don't want that Tesla or that Mustang Mach-E at my track because if it catches on fire, thermal runaway, we don't know what to do. We don't have the manpower. So as you have with FIA so many tools and the equipment and everything to find, the budgets and the manpower to do the same things doesn't apply. So we're looking for what we can do at different levels of motorsports in our country.
Well, just wait. What I show you is used, for the main, world or European championship. We have exactly the same problem. I think in the years to come, we will have Tesla or other EV, on the track, and that's why we try to train the people, but I think we will have the same problems. And in my opinion, I think the safety problems sometimes, I like the way you work in the US, I mean for the main categories. Because, for example, I think for Indy Formula, you have the same people, trained. For example, the medical team, the extrication team, traveling for different events. And I think that's very interesting because that's what I told you. If we perform some briefings and we try to put all the people working together. Because, for example, for a race event in Le Mans, you will have some French extrication team with French marshals. And then if you move to another country, you will have different people. And so they will deal with this hybrid or electrical car once or twice a year. So I think we have to think all together what we could do for the next year, because I think up to now, these are specific championships. But in the years to come, I think we will see other, electrical or hybrid cars running maybe with thermal conventional cars.
And we will see if they're still on course, the Indy cars here going hybrid after the 500.
Yes, I know that.
We have time for a couple of questions, but also, let me say, you will stick around afterward. And Eric, again, he was here last year talking about EV, and
okay.
two guys that you could learn a lot from if you're
just
interested in the topic.
a short comment. With this new cover, which was used in Monaco for single-seater cars, I think, for hybrid cars, for Indy Formula, this kind of protective cover, it's really great because it's so easy to set up compared to the different isolating mattress we are using, for example, the LMD cars where you have to put all these things together. It takes time. This cover for single-seater, they are perfect,
The cover, so one size fits all.
Absolutely. And you
So-
have, you have the Ultra Extra.
SCTA, different size cars and cockpits and everything. Good point. Thank you. Do we have a couple quick questions here? And I see one from Boris.
So do you think there'll ever be like a new fire extinguisher that can put out an electric fire, like the batteries?
You have a specialist. We talk about that. You have a specialist, but we have this interesting talk, and unfortunately, when you have thermal runaway, it's all gone. So it's a major issue,
One more.
So have you had any unusually unexpected experiences, like in Formula E, that was part of the learning curve of racing electric cars?
Up to now, I would say no. Even in Le Mans with running the hybrid cars, but it's interesting because for a couple of years, we only had 4 hybrid cars. This year in Le Mans, with same regulation, LMD, LMDH, we will have 23 hybrid cars. So, I think one day we will see some unsolved problems, because moving from 4 to 23 cars, it's a huge change.
Okay, thank you. Let's give you another hand. Thank you so much. Very good. And let me bring up Mr. Hoon. I mentioned Eric was with us last year. Eric talked about EV safety, and some of you were here last year. And lots happened in the last year. A lot we've learned together. And so he'll share a little bit of that. But I said, let's talk also some practical advice. We like practical advice. Just on fire and putting out fires and what to be aware of. Because, among other things, Eric is a director of safety, lab safety at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. I got about right.
Yep, you got all that.
And he has a number of students working on things in the labs and shops, and they don't know what they're doing. I mean, they can sometimes be careless and just not know things. So we talk about procedures and things that you look out for and try to teach them. And I said, can you share that with us? Eric?
Thank you, Don. So yes, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Meiselman. Thank you, Boris. There's going to be some things that I talk about in this presentation that are going to sound familiar, because they've already been touched on. I like it when I come to these events and I present with other very knowledgeable people, and I notice, like, hey, we're all starting to kind of say the same thing, so we must be onto something. So, and actually I think Boris alluded to this when he was up here talking, something that we should probably just establish, like, racing cars is kind of crazy, and you really can't engineer all the crazy out of racing cars. We can be as safe as we can, but you know, it's still inherently dangerous. There's always a risk when you're pushing it to the limit on a track. So, you know, I'll talk about some best practices and things to keep in mind, but you know, at the end of the day, it's racing, and crazy things can and will continue to happen despite our best efforts. Another thing, I will, you know, show quite a few pictures in video clips, and you know, some of you could look at that and go like, wow, well, that doesn't look like that was a very smart thing. But, and you know, I hope we can get past that and just understand that, you know, racing looks like a lot of different things in a lot of different parts of the world. And, you know, people just want to go fast, and they'll, you know, sometimes they'll take the shortest path to go fast. I just want us to acknowledge we have a responsibility to ourselves. If we work at a track, we have a responsibility to our customers, the drivers and teams, to do things as safely as we can. So let's just, you know, learn what we can and take that back to our tracks, to our teams. Let's just take that with us. So that being said, in these first two pictures, there's quite a difference in mindset here. You know, you could be out at a track day, the track tells you got to wear a helmet, so you're at least going to wear a helmet. And then you have people that have seen a thing or two, and they may tend to be a little bit more prepared, knowing that, you know, this could happen, and, you know, I want to be prepared for that. And it's not just the drivers. It's the tracks, too, and their level of preparedness. You know, there's going to be a fire extinguisher around somewhere, but there's a big difference between the types of help that you may get at your local short track on a Saturday night and the IndyCar safety team. I mean, credit where credit is due. Those guys are some of the best in the business. And fires aren't just limited to cars on track either. The picture on the left was a hauler fire from, I believe that was Talladega several years ago at a NASCAR race. For those of you that don't know, NASCAR haulers carry race fuel in additional saddle tanks, and at the end of the race, whatever fuel isn't used, they put them back in the saddle tanks to take with them, and oops, something happened there and there was a fire. The picture on the right, that was a battery fire, come to find out, at last year's Formula SAE Michigan event. I was there for that. I was actually part of the response where we didn't know it was a battery fire at the time, so we just all ran over there with fire extinguishers, and me, being a firefighter, after discharging a 10-pound fire extinguisher, I said to myself, that should have went out. Why didn't that go out? And so, yeah, we will definitely talk more about battery fire and thermal runaway here in a little bit. Okay, so I'm hoping this presentation tells a complete story, but in order to tell the story, I do need to start at the beginning. What is a fire? In the fire service, as a firefighter, we know that a fire takes four things to either start or sustain. It's going to need oxygen, it's going to need fuel, and it's going to need heat or an ignition source, and all that will create this, you know, a chemical chain reaction that will sustain combustion. When all four of these things come together, you get a fire. If you can separate them, then you don't get a fire, or the fire goes out. So a fire is a fire, right? So yes and no, depends on your perspective. If all you care about is if something is on fire or not, then no, it really doesn't matter. Fire is hot, fire burns things up, it destroys things, so fire is a fire. If you're trying to figure out how to prevent fires or extinguish fires, nuances start to kind of emerge. Organizations like the National Fire Protection Association have published volumes and volumes and volumes of literature on how all these different types of fires respond and how to put them out, and I am going to try and summarize 50 pounds worth of books in like 7 slides. So hang on. So when you talk about a fire extinguisher, especially those of us in motorsport or who have spent time at a track, you've probably seen these 3 types of fire extinguishers floating around. You have your basic water can, you have your regular ABC bright red dry chem fire extinguisher, and you have CO2. They all have their place. Dry chemical, ABC, or purple K, which a lot of tracks use, very effective against a lot of fire. If you have a fire, you get a dry chem fire extinguisher, you point it, you squeeze the handle, it goes poof, big cloud of white smoke, and the fire disappears. For the most part. Very effective and very easy to train people how to use them. Great tool for a lot of different uses. Cons. The chemical that is used in those fire extinguishers is nasty, nasty stuff. If you've ever gotten a face full of it, or you've been downwind from somebody that has used one of these fire extinguishers, you will know that you are in for a rough couple of days, coughing and wheezing, trying to get this stuff out of your system. It is also incredibly corrosive. Use it around computers. That printed circuit board, you can pretty much throw that away. It will corrode a lot of metals and, sensitive electronics. Probably want to keep that away from that. Also, it doesn't cool very well. So it does put out fire very well. But the one thing that this dry chemical stuff doesn't do is actually remove heat from a fire. This is a video I like to show of a brake fire in a NASCAR Gen 6 car. This is, I believe this is Alex Bowman. I can't remember the track. But, he comes into a pit with a brake fire. The pit road fireman jumps over the wall with his fire extinguisher, puts the fire out, and we can see the result of this. The fire's out. New tire. And no, it's not. So the fire was out, but the one thing that was still going on underneath that hood was all that stuff under there was still really, really hot. So we didn't take care of that part of the fire tetrahedron. So when the new wheel came on and it got fresh air through the brake ducting, it just reignited again because there was still fuel, there was still heat. The only thing that the dry chem did was just smother the oxygen. So as soon as it got fresh air, new fire, and that car didn't make it to the end of pit road before it was completely engulfed in flames. So moving on, water, basic water can. Firefighters love water. Water's great, easy to find in nature, extremely abundant, incredibly high capacity to absorb heat, which is going to become important, especially when I start talking about batteries and thermal runaway later. However, got to be careful around electricity because it is electrically conductive. It is water. Oil and water don't mix, as you'll see here in a second. When you have fuel fires, those can become dicey if you only have water to deal with them. And in extreme cases where you have like metal fires, like a magnesium fire, something like that, sometimes the H2 and O parts can separate off to gaseous hydrogen and gaseous oxygen, and when those things get hot, then they explode. So water can become a bigger part of the problem sometimes. But to demonstrate the effectiveness of water, this is not something you could do with any other type of fire extinguisher. This was a demo done by a fire department, and they created several rooms and let them become completely engulfed in flames. And the challenge was to see if they could put out that entire room with just 2.5 gallons of water.
That is nice. Holy crap.
We got flash.
You got it all burned on the floor, Mikey.
Yep, okay, go for it. Water can, water can. That's doing work. Look at him go. Nice work. Look at that. See? Water can, that's all you need. And an experienced individual.
I am so glad I got that on video.
We definitely want a copy of that.
So a little bit of water can go a long way in the right hands and in the right situation. However, like I said, oil and water don't mix. This is where things can get a little dicey, especially when we're out here on the racetrack. So, and it's the same thing about, hey, don't put water on a grease fire. You know, the water can flash the steam and kind of displace all this burning liquid. So now instead of having a little pool of a burning liquid fire, now you have a much bigger pool of a burning liquid fire. So, yes, we need to be careful. Although I will say that firefighters sometimes just like to overcome obstacles with just more water. You put enough water on a fire, you will force it into submission. But, you know, again, around here on the racetrack, not something, you know, you're not going to send a 1,000-gallon tanker out onto a racetrack whenever somebody's car catches fire. So we got to be a little strategic with how we approach fire. Carbon dioxide, it's not electrically conductive. There's no mess. It is great for dealing with fire when you really need to minimize your collateral damage, because there's no, like it's a gas. You're not flowing water, you're not putting another material on another material, so it's great. But it has a lot less firefighting ability than water or dry chem or something like that. And so this is something that's happened recently. Max Verstappen had a failure just this past year, had a fire on his car. And I thought this was a really interesting video taken by a fan that was up in the suites above his pit. So they're all using CO2 fire extinguishers. And if you notice, they are using a lot of CO2 fire extinguishers. Still not out. Still not out. These are crew guys, yes. There were some track firefighters that had jumped over the wall, and the crew guy said, "No, let us handle this." And they eventually got it with I think there were 5 different CO2 fire extinguishers at one point being used on that one hub. I mean, granted, given the sensitive nature of the components on that car, I could see why they would want to minimize collateral damage, but at the same time, a couple squirts of the water can would have dealt with that in far less time. So a bonus, something I know the IMSA safety team, the IndyCar safety team, NASCAR has started adopting this as well. It's a water can with a foam additive. So it's all the great things that water is, plus it's effective on fuel as well. However, it does require a slightly different technique than using other fire extinguishers.
Dry chemical powder is most effectively applied to fuel fires in low sweeping motions.
So you can see he's applying a regular ABC fire extinguisher to the fire, and it goes out. But
note how easily this one can be reignited.
So again, if you don't remove the ignition source or the heat
Fuel
source,
fires are best extinguished with foam extinguishers. The foam should be applied as lightly as possible to smother the fuel and prevent spreading of the fire.
a little less exciting.
Note how difficult it is to reignite this foam-smothered fire.
But that fire is very out.
So what's the cleanup for that after?
Yeah, if you noticed back there, this is a problem I've been running into at the university as I've been wanting to test some of these additives, especially now that there are companies coming out with additives. They're like, oh, this will take care of thermal runaway. You don't have to worry about battery fires anymore. Most of this stuff is an environmental hazard, so we just can't put it out on the ground. Come to find out from our other health and safety, the people I work with at the university, it would all have to be contained, it would have to be bottled up, and it would all have to be disposed of as hazardous waste. So there are some environmental concerns associated with some of these additives. They're great for firefighting, but they do cause other problems. So, you know, you kind of got to weigh the problems that you're dealing with. They're really good at putting out fire, so there's definitely use cases where you can deal with the aftermath because the other more urgent problem has been dealt with. All right, lithium-ion batteries. Couple of things here that Dr. Meisman has already alluded to: the Moto E paddock fire, the rally car fire or rally cross fire. We've had a couple fires in drag racing, and just this past year, Formula E had its first fire during preseason testing at Valencia. The battery was not in the car. The car had gone into a red light condition. Williams had removed the battery from the car, and Williams was working on the battery in their paddock area when there was a malfunction and the battery went into thermal runaway. So what is going on with battery fires? So number one thing to understand about battery fires is you'll hear battery fire and thermal runaway sometimes used synonymously, but battery fire is a result of thermal runaway. So thermal runaway can look like a lot of different things and doesn't always result in fire. We can have thermal runaways without any fire. It's still a problem, but the fire is caused by thermal runaway. Thermal runaway, regardless of what causes the thermal runaway, is just the battery is generating heat faster than it can get rid of it. And there's a lot of exothermic chemical reactions happening in a battery, and they can very easily get out of whack. So as the temperature inside a battery increases, materials of that battery start to break down. And when those materials break down, they generate heat and produce gas. And then as more heat is generated from the material breakdowns, that causes more materials to break down, and that's the runaway part of thermal runaway. The severity of this depends on a lot of factors. Low severity, say you have a more stable chemistry and it's at a low state of charge. It may fail and you may get a white cloud of gas. If it's a battery that's all charged up and it's a very potent chemistry, it could just explode with no advanced warning at all. To demonstrate that, this is a video here in North America. FSRI, the Fire Safety Research Institute, has been doing a ton of work to educate the public on lithium-ion battery safety, mainly in the context of e-mobility, because I know New York City has been dealing with an epidemic of deadly fires caused by people not treating battery-powered devices very well. So this is a video where they put a electric scooter in the thermal runaway on purpose, and all the things I talked about, all the side effects of thermal runaway are demonstrated in this video. It gets exciting, trust me. Give it a sec. So if you see the upper right corner, there's an infrared camera. You saw some puffing. There's that white smoke. Now, something worth noting, that white smoke could have hydrogen gas in it or carbon monoxide gas. Both of those gases are explosive on their own without any fire. So when the fire happens, you notice that the window blew out. That's because the fire also ignited all of that hydrogen and carbon monoxide. So when you have thermal runaway in an enclosed space, you could have fire, but you could also have explosion in a very high overpressurization of a compartment. In just a few seconds, that entire space becomes In the fire service, we call that flashover, where the temperature inside the room has reached a point where every single material in that room has just auto-ignited. We're talking many, many, many thousands of degrees. So, and going back to the question about, Boris, you asked us about, you know, what, are we gonna come up with a better fire extinguisher for this type of stuff? With what we know about thermal runaway and lithium-ion batteries, right now the key is just keeping them cool. If you have one cell fail, that failure is going to release some energy, but it's going to be over in a matter of seconds. If that one cell starts catching other cells on fire because they're, you know, immediately right next to them, that's where you get these hours-long battery fires, because one will set off another, and in a Tesla where you could have thousands of these cells all right next to each other, they'll keep popping off for hours and hours and days and days and days. The key is keeping them cool, because unlike a fire where you can, you know, separate elements of this fire tetrahedron and make them go out, all of those elements exist within one single cell. So you can't split them apart. You can't put out a thermal runaway once it starts. You can manage the effects of it. Here's another video from FSRI demonstrating what it looks like to try and put out a thermal runaway.
Here's a 4-panel comparison. So no extinguisher in the top left, ABC dry chem on the top right, carbon dioxide bottom right, and water. And so you can basically see for yourself in real time. Again, thermal runaway happens. This is a slightly smaller battery pack, but thermal runaway occurs. We immediately activate whatever the suppression method is, you know, based on the pane there. And you can see everything has some effect. It's not that all of a sudden these extinguishing agents don't work on fire or flaming, but they're not addressing the source of flammable gas release, and they're not really stopping propagation of thermal runaway. The thing that does that best is water, because it's a fantastic cooling agent. It's got a high specific heat. It can absorb a lot of energy. It can vaporize. It's all the great things it's always been for firefighting.
Yeah. So we can keep batteries cool, and that will yield the best result. But I think we need to change our mindset about being able to put out a battery fire. If you have, you know, a Tesla on the side of the road and it's just roaring in flames, you know, that probably the fastest way that's going to get solved is to just kind of let the car burn itself out at that point. There are, you know, and this is where water becomes important. If there is a rescue that's required, you know, we need enough water to be able to keep everything cool enough that we can do what we need to do, get people out of harm's way, and then if we have to let the car just do its thing, we can let it do its thing. Because any fire can only be extinguished once all that thermal runaway stuff stops. If those batteries keep popping off, then you're never going to put out the fire, because there's always going to be something fueling it. And like I said, the only way to stop cascading thermal runaway is to keep everything cool in the first place. Now this video is actually my own. This was part of my thesis research that I did at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte with our energy and battery faculty there. And you know, the question I was trying to answer is, well, how close to the edge can we get and still be able to kind of roll back time? You know, how close to a battery explosion can we get and keep it cool so that it doesn't do it at all? And at this point, the batteries are about 100 degrees Celsius, and it's hard to tell in the video, but the one up top, it's starting to release some gases. It's smoking a little bit. The one on the bottom, there's no intervention. It's just going to be allowed to do its thing. And these are time synced with each other, so they're at the same point. So the one on top, I've introduced about 1/4 gallon per minute, about 1.5 liters per minute of water. And the one on the bottom, I did nothing. And you'll see here in just a few seconds. There goes that one. That one was at a very high state of charge. It was a cell phone battery, and it did kind of what I expected with a very highly charged cell phone battery. When you heat it up, it went pop and flew off screen at several thousand degrees. The one up top, we kept it cool, and in fact, that battery specimen is still sitting in a steel container, unexploded, and it's been several months. So I'm very encouraged by that result. I think there is a lot of merit to being able to keep things cool. However, that's easier said than done, because somebody I was talking to the other day, it's like, well, the problem with thermal runaways, you can't get to the seat of the fire. And that's true. I mean, these batteries, for all intents and purposes, are hermetically sealed under many, many layers of protective packaging, which is great. They're well protected. But if you get in the thermal runaway, I mean, that's why fire departments are putting, hundreds of thousands of liters on an electric vehicle fire, because they're not actually cooling the thing that's getting hot. Now, I will say the vehicles that Williams Advanced Engineering has had a hand in developing with their battery packs, this is a picture from a GTP car that we see in the paddock here today. The Formula E cars are the same way. They all feature something called a douse port, where if there is a thermal emergency of one of these battery packs, there's a special nozzle on the fire extinguishers that the IMSA safety team can plug into the side of this car and start flowing water. There's a little burst panel in the bottom of the battery that'll pop, and it'll just start flushing the battery with cool water. Williams has tested this, and of course it's proprietary like everything else in the FIA and Formula One and Formula E, so there's no white paper. I wish there was a white paper on this. But they took a version of an IMSA high voltage battery and let it go into thermal runaway for about a minute and a half before they intervened. And they were able to bring the overall temperature of their battery down to a point that the runaway reaction stopped with less than 100 liters of water. So we're talking like 30, 40 gallons, I believe, something like that. That's a manageable volume that we can put on track services trucks or have available, and that battery, with less than 100 liters of water, that battery never reignited. So cooling, there is merit to looking at it from the perspective of keeping it cool rather than extinguishing the results. So prevention is key to I just noticed that's a weird sentence. I could have worded that better. But some practical advice for preventing thermal runaway from happening in the first place. The first thing, and I think this is the biggest thing, the fires that we have seen in motorsport, the Rallycross fire, the Formula E test fire, the Moto E fire, they all happened while the battery was out of the car. So the Moto E fire and the Rallycross fire happened during charging. And that matches what the fire service is seeing worldwide. We're having a lot of electric vehicles catch fire in people's garages, in parking garages, at charge stations. For whatever reason, that is the high-risk time. When we are charging these batteries, things go wrong, and when they go wrong, you end up with a thermal runaway. So the first thing is we have to make sure that we're using appropriate chargers for the appropriate batteries. Last year we had Kevin Wells was in here from Formula Drift, and he was talking about, they've had some people mess around with some electric drift cars with mixed reviews from the audience, but he's like, oh yeah, we've got every once in a while someone will have like a really small 12-volt lithium-ion battery that they'll use for the low-voltage circuit because it's small, it's light, it saves a lot of weight, saves a lot of space. Every once in a while, we'll have one of those catch fire because someone puts it on a trickle charger. Yeah, you can't trickle charge a lithium-ion battery. That's not how those work. They have very specific charge profiles that have to be maintained, because if you just keep trying to put voltage into that thing, you're just going to make it go pop. You have to use the charger specific to that battery, or the charger needs to be designed if you're actually building a battery pack. The other thing is manage heat, charge in a well-ventilated area. Several years ago, with, the knowledge everybody was getting about thermal runaway and fires, everybody was saying, put these away, seal them in a cabinet, keep them protected. But the batteries were making so much heat in these sealed cabinets, they were still going into thermal runaway because they couldn't get rid of it. So now there's more of an emphasis on ventilation, because as we saw with the gases that come out of these batteries when they fail, they create an explosive mixture. You don't want that inside a sealed cabinet, otherwise you've just created a bomb, and that's not good either. So we prefer to have it ventilated rather than sealed up really, really tight. Telemetry is also key, and this is something that in motorsport we have the luxury of being able to write rules and say things in our homologation process that if you're going to build a car to run in this series or race on this track, you need to give us access to the data. We need telemetry. At the very least, you need telemetry, because you need to know what's going on with the battery. You need to know what's going on with your high voltage powertrain, because if something goes wrong, we want to know about it before it's just a ball of fire going down the track. And we have the luxury of doing that. Like, the data is available. The way battery management systems talk to high voltage battery packs, all that data is there. We just need it reported somehow. That is an uphill battle we're dealing with in like OEM batteries. California is trying to enact legislation that is going to force EV manufacturers to make battery condition information available through like your OBD2 port. Because right now, you can't. All that information is proprietary, hidden behind many, many layers of encryption on like Teslas and Rivians and stuff like that. Some amount of data needs to be publicly available for firefighters, if nothing else. Help us out. Don't use batteries that show signs of damage, swelling, overheating, physical damage. And lastly, watch for arcing. This was something Dr. Meiselman touched on. But I'm going to go a step further, because arcing can certainly, short circuits and can lead to thermal runaway. But with any high voltage electrical source, whether it's high voltage mains, whether it's the 280 volt power in your shop, or a 600 volt battery, arc flash is something that we also can't ignore. I witnessed that at a Formula student event as well. When a tool slipped, it was only a 70 volt arc, but it was enough that it left flakes of metal embedded in the person's face shield that was working on the battery. And I think this video by Westex illustrates the kind of the extreme end of that.
A typical arc flash can release energy from a few calories up to 20, and exposures between 20 and 40 calories are not uncommon. Everyday clothes made from cotton or polycotton fabrics can be readily ignited at these exposure
much like
levels.
we talk about
Once
needing to
ignited,
wear
they will
protective
continue to
clothing,
burn long after the
to
arc
protect
flash is
ourselves
over,
from fire in
dramatically
race
increasing
cars.
the extent and
Much
severity
like,
of burn injury.
Boris's experience here at Long Beach, you wouldn't want to do that in street clothes. Our utility guys, linemen that go and work on our power when we lose power at our house, they're all dressed up in fire-resistant clothing because of this very thing. If a tool slips or something like that, and all that high voltage energy comes out all at once, yeah, that's really hot, and it looks like a giant explosion. And there's little sparks and little bits of molten metal that go flying everywhere. So our mechanics, our emergency workers that work at the track, that's something we need to be on the lookout for as well. It's a very, very remote chance that everything that would have to fail for this to happen in an electric vehicle would fail, but it's mathematically possible, so I don't think we can ignore it. That was something else that that we kind of talked about, the unfortunate death of Dale Earnhardt Sr. As tragic as that was, there were a lot of advancements in safety that came out of that. And as with a lot of things safety related, it takes tragedies to really spur on this innovation. I think we know enough about batteries and high voltage electrical systems that we know what these risks are, and I think we're in a good position to get ahead of it. But you know, we're going to have to convince the powers that be that it's, you know, worth investing the money on the safety now rather than reacting to it when we really do like hurt someone or cause a lot of damage. So in conclusion, just for fire in general, water continues to be the undisputed champion of firefighting, but no one type of medium is going to solve all your problems. We need variety, especially here at the tracks, because, you know, if you have Formula One at your track, you know, they're going to want to minimize collateral damage because they have a lot of really expensive stuff on their cars that they want to salvage as much as possible. You know, if NASCAR, they like to run a combination of dry chem and water with foam, depending on what's on fire, and they're still, you know, trying to figure out what's the best tool for what job. And that goes into know your customer. What type of fire do you most expect? You know, when I've done races with the NHRA out there at the 4-wide at ZMAX Dragway, you know, we kind of have an idea when those like Top Fuel and funny cars, when they catch fire. I mean, it can be violent, but it's not unheard of, and it's rather expected, and they have a really good procedures for dealing with that thing. So know your customer. Train. You know, this goes back to kind of the difference between the global model of track services, where it's largely corner marshals that may work 1 or 2 weekends out of the year, versus dedicated safety teams like IndyCar, NHRA, and IMSA have that travel with these groups. I will say, even though like NASCAR doesn't have a full-time safety team that travels around, I will say they do a very good job training with the individual tracks, so that NASCAR teams and drivers that show up to track, for the most part, understand the level of service that they can expect from the firefighters at the tracks. You know, at my track at Charlotte Motor Speedway, we spend an entire weekend every year with NASCAR going over drills and training and you know, what's expected out of emergency crews at these events. So, and especially with EVs, those last two are really important. You know, if you plop an EV down at XYZ racetrack, I don't think you can expect them to know what to do if there's a thermal runaway or a red car or something like that. That at this point, with where we're at in our discovery of the problems of lithium-ion batteries, you know, I think you know, the Stand 21 Safety Foundation, and with what we've started with the EverSafe Conference Series, I think we're building a really good consortium of people that are knowledgeable on the subject, and we're trying to get the word out as fast as we can to as many people as we can, so that, you know, our tracks and our series can be a little more prepared for, you know, I think hybrids are the future. I think OEMs are getting cold feet about an all-electric future, but, you know, these high-voltage batteries aren't going anywhere, and they're probably going to come with additional internal combustion engines. So now we've got all the different types of fire wrapped up into one vehicle. So, you know, tracks are going to have to be ready for anything. So with that, thank you for having me again, and if there are any other questions, I'm happy to take them.
And thank you, Eric. Let's very good. I know we kept you a few minutes late here, but how about a couple questions, and then we'll have some options of meeting privately and gather around, and folks interested in these particular subjects. I know also, Dean reminded me downstairs, the Formula SAE cars are there, and a couple of students that will assist you and show you around if you want to go down that direction. So let's take a couple questions here. I see one here.
In the room. As a hybrid owner, what kind of a fire extinguisher should I be carrying?
Is it a plug-in hybrid?
Yes.
I think, okay, so
You stumped him.
Well, I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase the answer to this question. I think not well. Phrasing that in a slightly more, I think a single fire extinguisher for a plug-in hybrid. If you want to give yourself time to, get to safety, I think, water's going to be the best thing to just keep things cool, to buy yourself more time. I think as a hybrid owner, if you're charging it in your garage or something like that, I think it would be more important to keep that area free of other things that could be a fuel source. Like if you have outdoor power tools, don't store gas cans in there with your plug-in hybrid. And make sure you have good smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors as well, because those will give you early warning if you're worried about it, inside your house or adjacent to your house. In your car, I mean, a thermal runaway, if you're driving your car, is not going to surprise you. The car is just going to stop working several minutes before it just spontaneously combusts into fire. Like you're not going to be driving down the road and all of a sudden it's a ball of fire. It will, there has to be a lot of things in that car that malfunction that's going to cause it to stop working before it's just fire everywhere. So I wouldn't be worried about driving a hybrid or an electric vehicle and just being surprised by it suddenly being on fire. It will stop working before it just goes into thermal runaway. I know that may not be the most reassuring, maybe not the answer you were hoping to hear, but that's where we're at with our knowledge right now. Yep.
Eric, thanks so much for being here and all your information. It's very valuable. I can tell you what, progress is slow in this area, but from the answers that you had last year to the knowledge you've gained with UNC and all the partners, a great job. I mean, you can't speak enough for it, but just from coming from last year to this year, you certainly have a lot more answers, and I know there'll be more to come, and it's a difficult problem to address, but thank God that you folks and who's ever partnered with you are still addressing the situation, because I don't know where we'd be at if nobody was doing it, so thank you.
Oh, yes, my pleasure. Good. I like that question. Okay, all right, thanks.